The Texas highway stretched like a faded ribbon beneath the moonless sky, flat and endless, with nothing but wind and dust for company. Jake Turner had driven this road 1,000 times before. Every mile was familiar, every broken sign and dried creek bed like an old scar on land he'd once believed would heal with time. His truck was old, the kind that growled more than it ran, but it never quit on him. It matched him that way. Jake was 58, built like a fence post, with gray threaded through his beard like desert ash. His eyes had seen too much and said too little. He hadn't married, hadn't bothered with town life in years. The ranch kept him busy. The past kept him quiet. Tonight, he'd been returning from Amarillo after selling a couple of horses. He preferred traveling at night, less people, fewer questions, and no memories drifting in from faces that used to know him. As he drove, his headlights cut through blackness, and then a shape. He slowed. At first, he thought it was a coyote or stray calf. Then he realized it was a person. A girl, standing alone beside a teetering highway sign that leaned like it had given up long ago. Jake's foot came off the gas. 100 warning bells rang in his mind. You didn't stop on empty roads at night. Everyone knew that. The land wasn't kind. People weren't kinder. But something about the way she stood. Not waving, not moving, just waiting, like someone who had already accepted whatever came next. Jake's truck rolled to a stop several yards away. The engine idled. The girl hesitated, then took 2 slow steps forward. The headlights revealed her face. Too young, too pale, dirt on her cheeks. Her dark hair stuck to her forehead as if she'd been crying, or sweating in fear. She wrapped her arms around herself for warmth or protection, Jake couldn't tell which. Sir. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Jake didn't move, didn't smile, didn't act tough either. Road's dangerous to walk at night, he said evenly. Her lips trembled. I know. She didn't look at his eyes. She looked at the ground. Jake noticed details most men wouldn't. She had no shoes, just torn socks. Her knees were scraped raw, her hands shook as if she hadn't eaten or slept in days. You hurt? He asked. She shook her head quickly. No, I'm just stuck. Something in those words felt heavier than they should have been. Where you headed? She hesitated. Anywhere but here. Jake studied her. She looked broken, not dangerous. But he'd lived long enough to know desperation could wear many masks. He leaned an arm out the window. You got family. Her jaw tightened. No. He frowned slightly. You got money. She laughed, but not from humor. No. Then she finally looked at him. Her eyes were darker than the road behind her. And then she said, very quietly, very carefully, as if expecting a slap instead of mercy. I can pay another way, if you'll take me with you. The words hit Jake like a bullet. Not because he hadn't heard something like that before, but because he never thought he'd hear it again. He sat frozen. Anger didn't rise in him. Sadness did. Deep, old, familiar. He stared at her a long moment. She stood bracing herself, like someone about to fall down a long flight of stairs and already knows it's going to hurt. Jake opened the truck door. She flinched. He didn't walk toward her. He didn't touch her. Instead, he went to the back of the truck and quietly unhooked the latch on the horse trailer. Inside stood a large chestnut mare, calm and beautiful, even in the dark. Jake opened the ramp. Then he walked back toward the girl. He held out his hand. Not in hunger. Not in command. In invitation. You get on my horse, he said, low and firm. And you don't offer that again. Not to me. Not to any man that's worth a damn. She stared at him, confused. Sir, you're safe now, he repeated. For the first time since he'd stopped, she started to cry. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears sliding down her dirty face like rain on stone. Jake gently lifted her like she weighed nothing, as if she were made of air and hurt instead of bone and fear. He placed her onto the horse and tied the reins loose so she wouldn't fall. She sat stiffly, not knowing whether to trust this moment. Where are we going? She whispered. Home, he answered simply. Dash dash dash. They drove for over an hour through dark farmland and empty roads. She didn't speak. Neither did he. The horse walked calmly behind, trusting Jake like she always had. Finally, she whispered something. My name's Lily. Jake nodded. I'm Jake. Silence passed again. Lily swallowed. I didn't mean. She hesitated. I didn't mean to say that back there. I just didn't know what else to do. Jake didn't look at her right away. When folks think there's no tomorrow, he said slowly. They start selling pieces of themselves today. She looked down. I ran away, she admitted. Oklahoma. My stepdad, I couldn't stay anymore. His jaw tightened. I hitchhiked. Trusted wrong people. Thought kindness existed where it didn't. Jake's hands curled on the steering wheel. You're young, he said. You shouldn't have had to learn life like that. Her voice broke. I just wanted to live long enough to figure out who I was. Something cracked inside him. By the time the ranch came into view, the sky was slowly lightening at its edges. Not day, but promise of it. The gates opened with a slow creak. Horses moved in the shadows. The house sat small but strong. Like its owner. Jake parked. He stepped out, opened the trailer, and helped Lily down. She swayed. He caught her just in time. She stiffened. Jake let go immediately. I'll make coffee. There's food inside, he said. You don't owe me. You don't explain anything. You stay as long as you need. Lily nodded. Her voice was barely air. Thank you. Jake didn't reply. Some things were too heavy for words. And some rescues were only beginning. Morning didn't arrive loudly at Jake Turner's ranch. It came slow and soft, like it was afraid to scare away whatever fragile piece still lived there. Lily woke to the sound of wind moving through dry grass and horses shifting outside the old wooden house. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back like cold water. The highway, the dark, Jake's face, the horse, the word safe. She sat up suddenly, heart pounding, expecting to see strangers, locked doors, anger, or rules. Instead, sunlight touched a wooden floor. A patched quilt sat neatly over her. Sneakers rested beside the bed like someone had placed them there on purpose. She ran her fingers over the blanket, unsure if it was real. No one had tucked her into bed in years. Slowly, she stood and opened the door to the small room. The house smelled like coffee and something warm, eggs maybe. The hallway was narrow but clean. Photos hung on the wall, not of people, but horses, fields, sunrises. No family, no wedding photos, only work, land, and passing seasons. Lily walked into the kitchen. Jake stood at the stove wearing an old flannel shirt and jeans. His movements were quiet and careful, like noise itself might break something. Oh, morning, he said, without surprise. You hungry? She nodded. He slid a plate toward her and stepped back, giving her space. Real food, warm food. She wanted to cry. They ate in silence, not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. The ranch didn't feel like a place that asked questions. It simply offered room to breathe. After a while, Jake poured her coffee and said, You don't gotta explain anything to me. Not today. Not ever, if you don't want to. Lily held the cup with shaking hands. No one ever says that, she admitted. He shrugged. People talk too much anyway. She almost smiled. Later, Jake showed her around the ranch. He didn't call it a tour. He just walked and let her follow. Horses watched them with soft eyes. The barn smelled like hay and leather. Dust swam in the light. The world felt slower here, like time walked instead of ran. You can help if you want, Jake muttered. But you don't have to. Rest is allowed here. That sentence landed deeper than any comfort ever had. Rest is allowed here. Lily reached out and touched the nose of a tall brown horse. She pretty, Lily whispered. That's Belle. She don't bite, but she judges. Lily laughed without meaning to. It surprised her. Jake looked back over his shoulder and saw it, and quickly looked away. On the third night, Lily woke screaming. No sound came out of her mouth, only fear tearing through her chest. She sat upright, soaked in sweat, heart crashing against her ribs. Hands gripped the sheets. Her father's voice echoed in dreams she couldn't escape. Doors slamming, footsteps in the dark, words she still didn't have language for. She rocked back and forth like a child. Then a light appeared at her door. Jake stood there, unsure. I heard something, he said quietly. You all right? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Jake didn't come closer. He sat outside her doorway. On the floor, like a guard. I ain't going anywhere, he said. You don't have to talk. Her breathing slowly steadied. With someone there, it didn't feel like the darkness would eat her alive. Days passed. Lily started helping without being asked. Feeding chickens, sweeping, cleaning tack. She liked feeling useful. It made her feel real. Jake talked more now, but only a little. She learned he'd lost his wife to illness 23 years ago. No kids. No second chances. The ranch was quieter after that. Like him. One evening, she finally spoke something she'd never meant to. Why did you stop for me? Jake stared into the fire. Because once, he paused. Someone didn't stop for someone I loved. She didn't press. Pain like that didn't like questions. One afternoon, a truck pulled into the dirt driveway. Vietnam War veteran cap, cigarette hanging from his lip. A man with loud laughter and hard eyes. Hey old man, he shouted. Brought your feed. Lily froze inside. Her body remembered threat for no reason at all. Jake noticed instantly. You don't have to be here, he said softly. But she didn't hide. She stayed. The man looked at her with eyebrows raised. Well, I'll be damned, you finally kidnapped someone. Jake didn't smile. That's Lily, he replied. She's staying. Something sharp passed between the men. The visitor chuckled. Just jokin'. Jake didn't. The truck left. And Jake stood between the dust and Lily long after the sound was gone. That night, Lily sat on the porch. I still flinch when engines stop, she admitted. Jake nodded. Your body ain't stupid. It just remembers where it got hurt. Wind passed between them. Then she whispered. I don't think anyone's ever protected me before. Jake didn't answer right away. Finally, he rasped. Someone should've. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Not loud. Just honest. Weeks changed her. She ate better. Slept longer. Smiled easier. Sometimes sorrow darkened her face, but hope had begun fighting back. One morning, Lily stepped outside and spotted a man standing at the gate. Her heart leapt into her throat. But Jake was already there. Blocking. Her shoulders dropped. She realized something then. She no longer waited for betrayal. She waited for morning. And somewhere inside Jake, something healed much slower, but for the first time in decades, it healed at all. Winter came quietly to Jake Turner's ranch. It didn't arrive with storms or announcements, just frost on fence posts and breath in the air that looked like smoke. Lily had never seen snow fall slowly before. In Oklahoma, winters were loud and wet. Here, winter whispered. She stood on the porch with Jake's old coat wrapped around her shoulders and watched snow touch the land like forgiveness. Never thought I'd see snow like this, she murmured. Jake nodded, eyes on the sky. Some places don't just change the weather, he said. They change people. The past didn't erase itself just because Lily was safer now. Some nights still clawed at her. Memory didn't keep a calendar. But now, she wasn't alone in it. One evening, Lily finally spoke her truth, not in a rush, not in panic. Just honesty, sitting heavy between them like a fragile thing. They sold me once, she whispered, staring at the fire. I escaped. I was 14, but I never said it out loud before. Jake closed his eyes, not because he wanted to forget, but because he never wanted her to remember alone. He said only 2 words. I'm sorry. But those 2 words carried years. The ranch changed Lily too, in ways she didn't measure until one day she caught her reflection outside. Her eyes were clearer. Her shoulders no longer curled inward. She stood straighter. Alive, not hiding. One afternoon, an envelope arrived in the mail. It wasn't addressed to Jake. It was addressed to her. Lily's hands trembled. Inside was a letter from a shelter in Oklahoma City. They had found her old file. Her fingerprint. Her school name. Her missing person record. She read it aloud, slowly. They think I'm dead, she breathed. Jake responded without hesitation. Then you've already beaten death. Now you decide who lives. The hardest day came not with anger, but with a choice. Opportunity knocked when Lily didn't expect it. A counselor from the shelter arrived in person. Kind eyes. Gentle voice. She doesn't have to leave, Jake told the woman. I know, she replied. But sometimes moving forward means walking away from where you survived. The decision lived in Lily's chest like broken glass. Jake packed her bag without being asked. Folded her clothes. Set her boots near the door. Not one word of guilt. She cried hardest for the man who refused to make her stay. When it was time, she stood in front of him. I don't want goodbye, she choked. Then don't call it that, he whispered. Call it a see you later. She hugged him. Not as a child. Not as a victim. As family. The ranch felt empty after she left. Not lonely. Vacant. Like a heartbeat had moved out. Jake still fed the horses. Still rode fences. But the silence now had weight. He hadn't realized how much of himself he'd poured into the shape of another human being until that shape disappeared. 6 months passed. No letters. No calls. Jake began to believe again in loss. Then in spring, a car appeared at the gate. Not a truck. Not dust-covered. Clean. New. Jake stood with his hat in hand. A woman stepped out. Not the girl. Not the broken one. Someone new. Lily walked toward him, confident, bright, eyes alive with light he didn't give her, but helped protect. I came home, she smiled. Jake's breath disappeared. She told him everything by the fire that night. She'd enrolled in classes, gotten therapy, gotten a job, found friends, and faced the past, one brick at a time. Turns out, she said softly, safety doesn't mean hiding forever. It means learning how to live again. Jake nodded, like a father watching his daughter return stronger. Later that night, Lily stood in the same doorway where Jake once sat on the floor to protect her from nightmares. You saved my life, she whispered. Jake shook his head. You did. I just stood in the way of the worst of it. She hugged him once more. Longer. Harder. Braver. The next morning, they rode horses together. Not like survivor and rescuer, but like two souls who had met on the wrong road and decided to walk the right one together. The sun came up slow. No rush. Like it was honoring them. And far behind them, on a Texas highway that once wanted a price, Lily had finally found something priceless.